Hello, friends. It's good to be with you again. Miss Sharon and I really miss you, and we're always glad when you join us for Sunday school. So welcome. We're going to begin, like we always do, with our worship table, which is covered with a white cloth. White is the color for Easter. And you're probably wondering, well, it's not Easter anymore, but it is Easter. We have Easter time for 50 days after Easter Sunday, and we will keep the white cloth out for all of those Sundays. Today is the 4th Sunday of Easter, and like we always do, we will light our Christ candle. By now, you probably know that we light this every time we meet, and this reminds us of something. Do you remember what it is? Yes, it reminds us that Jesus Christ is the light of the world. And it also reminds us that God is with us wherever we go. Now we're going to begin with our litany, our opening prayer. And I will have my part, and your part is the same every single time. Here's what I want you to say. Christ is risen indeed. I know you can remember that. So I will point to you when it's your turn to say, Christ is risen indeed. Jesus Christ was raised from the dead and lives forever. Christ is risen indeed. We rejoice that Jesus Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Come, Jesus, and guide our learning. Christ is risen indeed. Amen. Thank you for our opening. Now, we almost always start with a question. And our question for this week is this. Who do you know that has a voice that you recognize? Is there someone's voice that you know right away when you hear it, even before you see that person? Who is that person? And did you hear any of those voices before you came today? Maybe you recognize the voice of one of your parents or both of them. Maybe you recognize the voice of a friend or a teacher. Maybe it's somebody in your neighborhood or somebody at church. All of us have voices that we recognize. And I want to ask you to do me a favor. Will you listen to the story today in the Bible story? Listen for the words that talk about recognizing a voice. That means knowing whose voice it is, even if you cannot see that person. So we're going to have a story about that in just a minute. Also, our story today is about shepherds. Now, I don't know how much you know about a shepherd, but a shepherd is a way of saying someone who herds the sheep. A sheep herder is someone who takes charge of the sheep and keeps them all in a group and keeps them safe. A shepherd is a job that people go to every day. I don't know any shepherds myself. I've never even met a shepherd. But in many parts of the world, there are still shepherds. When I have traveled to other countries, I have looked out in the fields and I have seen shepherds out there with their sheep. We have shepherds in this country too, but not where we live. So it's very likely that you've never met a shepherd either, and maybe none of your friends has ever met a shepherd. So do you know what a shepherd's job is all day long, what they do? We're going to learn about that. We're going to talk about what shepherds do, because the Bible has lots of stories about shepherds. And one of the shepherds that we hear lots about in the Bible is named David. Now, David was a shepherd boy. And you notice he's carrying this big stick with a hook on the end. That stick was used to gently put around the neck of a sheep or around the body and pull that sheep gently back from any danger that it might get in. And you notice that David is a young boy in this picture, because young boys were often shepherds. Now, if a shepherd is responsible, is in charge of a bunch of sheep, it's called a flock of sheep. And it might just be 3 or 4 sheep, or it might be 10 or 12 sheep, or it might even be like 1,000 sheep. But they're still called a flock. And the job of the shepherd is to make sure all of those sheep are safe. So let's hear about what a shepherd has to do to take care of the flock. First of all, it has to guide the sheep and call the sheep. You see, sheep don't know how to go in a straight line and follow something. They always want to wander off on the sides, and they get lost that way, which is not good at all. So a shepherd has to make sure that doesn't happen. And one way he does it is he calls the sheep. He calls them. His voice is what the sheep hear, and they answer him. They stop what they're doing and they come back to the shepherd. Now they only answer their own shepherd. If anyone else called them, if I call them or you call them, or somebody that was paid to watch them call them, they would not come. That's just how sheep are. Sheep recognize the voice of their own shepherd. Another thing that a shepherd does is he guards the sheep and he protects them from wild animals. Sometimes there are mountain lions or wolves or coyotes out there that would like to have sheep for supper. And so the shepherd is there to make sure that doesn't happen. Here's another picture that shows you what a shepherd carries with him. This shepherd boy has a slingshot in his hand. If you've ever seen a slingshot, you know that you can put a stone or a rock in it, and you can whirl it around until you have a lot of speed, and then you throw the rock. And it scares away the wild animals. Sometimes it even hits them and hurts them. So that's what the slingshot is used for. Another thing they use is a stick, and they can use that almost like a weapon to keep the wild animals away. The shepherd is all about protecting the sheep, because sheep cannot protect themselves. So that is the job of the shepherd. In Bible times, shepherds would go out into the field where it was rocky and dry and find water and green grass for their sheep. They sometimes had to go a long way to find the green grass and water, because most of the ground around them was dry and had nothing for the sheep to eat. So that was another job that the shepherd had, was finding the green grass and the water for the sheep. And the last thing that a shepherd did was that he took care of the sheep. The shepherd was a helper. If they got in trouble, if they fell in a ditch, he could pick them up and get them out, because they could not get out by themselves. If they were hurt, or if they were afraid and shaking, they were so afraid, he would scoop them up and carry them, just like this picture of David carrying a sheep. This sheep that David is carrying may be a hurt sheep, or maybe it's a frightened sheep. And David is carrying it because he is a good shepherd, and he is caring for that sheep. So now that we know what the job of a shepherd is, let's talk about the Bible story for today. The Bible story for today comes from the book of John in the New Testament. We have it marked in our Bible, and you notice it's at the very back of the Bible. And it's in the 4th chapter and the 11th verse of the book of John. The first 4 books of the New Testament are called the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John is the 4th book. And the Gospels have a story, every one of them, about a person. Who is that person that is in all of the Gospel stories? It's Jesus. The good news of Jesus is in every one of those books: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So today we're going to talk about the one that is in John 10, and we will talk about the people that came to hear Jesus one day. Jesus was preaching, and he was teaching, and he was healing people. Jesus did this every day, and one day some Pharisees wanted to hear him. Now the Pharisees were men who studied God's laws, and they had heard about Jesus, and they said, I believe we need to go hear him preach. And this is part of what they heard. It was written down for them to read and for us to read and hear. I am the good shepherd, said Jesus. The good shepherd does everything to keep his sheep safe. When a person who is not the owner of the sheep watches over them, that person will run away if danger comes. One wolf and that person is gone because he doesn't care about the sheep. The shepherd cares about his sheep and will not leave them to face danger alone. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, each one, and my sheep know me. I have other sheep who are not with me now, and I take care of them too. My sheep listen to my voice. They pay no attention to the voices of the other shepherds. One day, there will be one flock and one shepherd. Now, the people in Jesus' time knew that they knew what any good shepherd was. And Jesus is saying that he is a good shepherd. The good shepherd will lead the sheep to green grass and cool water. Well, who are the sheep? If Jesus is the good shepherd, who are the sheep? We, you and I, and all believers are the sheep. And the good shepherd will protect the sheep from wild animals. Jesus will protect us. The good shepherd knows each sheep and makes sure that each one of them is well and safe, and we are the sheep. Jesus is the good shepherd. He is our good shepherd, just like he was the good shepherd when he walked this earth. He is still our good shepherd. So, we know what a good shepherd does. He protects the sheep. He leads the sheep so they won't wander off and get lost. He calls the sheep, and the sheep recognize his voice because he is their shepherd. And he cares for them. He picks them up and cares for them. He leaves them to food and water. So you know that the owner, the good shepherd, the owner of the sheep, takes better care of those sheep than anybody who is just paid to watch them. Why did Jesus call himself the good shepherd? Well, we know it that he knows his sheep, and that's what a good shepherd does. He knows his sheep. He knows us by name, Jesus does. A good shepherd knows all his sheep's name. Even if there are 1,000 of them, he knows who they are. And we know Jesus. We recognize the voice of Jesus. His sheep, that's us, listen to his voice. And we know that the good shepherd, that's Jesus, will protect us and make sure that we are safe and we are well. Now, sometimes, we talked a little bit about this, but sometimes sheep wander off. If they see a patch of grass over here that looks really good, they just wander over there to try to eat it. And then pretty soon they see another patch over here and they go over there and they eat a little bit of that. Well, pretty soon, the rest of the sheep are moved on and they're lost. They don't know where they are. That shepherd has to come back and find them. And you know, we are sheep. Sometimes we wander off. We are not on the straight path that the good shepherd Jesus is leading us on. And we wander off and Jesus has to come find us and bring us back. We keep hearing all these voices calling to us. Which one is Jesus' voice? Well, maybe one is our friend's voice. Maybe one is the voice of the television. All kinds of voices we hear. And some voices are good voices. And we need to say yes to those voices. But we need to also say no to the voices that are not the voice of Jesus. Jesus has promised to never let us go. And Jesus will lead us on the straight path. It's our job as sheep to follow. So I want you to do me a favor this week. Will you please listen for the voice of Jesus this week? Listen for the Good Shepherd's voice. We're going to send some activities home with you so that you will be able to hear that voice a little bit easier. These activities will help you do that. One is about how to pray, and another one is about reading the Bible. This one is about writing a poem about the Good Shepherd. And the one they have shown in the picture is written in a circle in the shape of a sheep. You can do that too. It shows you how to do that. And the last one is a song. We like to have music to help us remember things. And this song is Kumbaya. Do you remember the song? We've sung it before in Sunday school. Kumbaya, my Lord, kumbaya. Kumbaya, my Lord, kumbaya. Kumbaya, my Lord, kumbaya. Oh Lord, kumbaya. Now there's another verse that goes with it. And it says, Jesus went about doing good. Jesus went about doing good. He told everyone, God is love. God cares for you. So practice singing that this week, and you will be reminded all about this story of the Good Shepherd. I'm so glad you were here today. I hope you'll come again next week, and we will hope to see you in person in not too many days from now. Let's have our closing prayer, and then we'll say goodbye. Loving God, we thank you for sending Jesus, the Good Shepherd, to love us, to protect us, and to guide us on the right path. Keep our ears open to hear his voice, gently guiding us into his fold. Amen. All right, I'm going to say goodbye to you in the Easter fashion. The way we do in Easter is, I say, Christ is risen, and you will answer, he is risen indeed. Are you ready? Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Amen. Bye.